Hi guys. This is Paddy, and I'm really honored to be here among two superb guitar players, two superb musicians, and more importantly, two superb humans that I know for a while now. Especially Ehsaan. I had the opportunity of even sharing the stage with Ehsaan about 10, 12 times with Shankar Ehsaan Loy. It was great pleasure, and it was a great learning that I had across those many sessions.
Yeah, he had to learn songs at the airport.
Yeah,
Remember?
and that one time so I was called literally, I think 5 o'clock in the morning. I was called by Umesh to join a show. I
Yeah,
rushed to the airport, and I had to learn all the rhythm parts of all the rock on songs, because that was just when rock on had released.
yeah.
And we were sitting at the airport, and Ehsan was had pulled out his guitar, and without plugging it in, he was showing me the parts, and I was writing down furiously. I was just going ferociously writing down the parts. And then we actually waited till there was an announcement that was made, that last call for Mr. Ehsan and Mr. Padmanabhan.
And
That's how things. And it was a great gig, and all afternoon I was learning the parts, and it was fun. Okay, so there's also this boy sitting over here, Amithav Gautam. Um, don't go on his looks, and don't go on his age. He's just 17 years old, but he's a ferocious guitar player. He's
So please,
an
thanks.
amazing blues guitarist. Um uh, when you hear him play, you know that it's not something that he's just rehearsed and come. It's a lot of attitude. It's a lot of feel. It just comes from within when he plays. So great to have you here, Amitav.
Thank you so much, sir. Thank you so much.
And I would like to have the first question to you. How did it all begin? I mean, when did you hear? What's your first memory of listening to music in the first place? And then how did you pick up the guitar? If you could just tell us something about that.
Actually, very early on, my parents took me to a Beatles tribute, where actually all four of them dressed up like the Beatles and played like them, and that hit me. And after that, for at least 2 3 years, I went completely. Uh, I was like completely into the Beatles, and that led me to the Rolling Stones, and I became a very, very big fan of the Rolling Stones, and that's when I heard the blues for the first time. And like Muddy Waters, B.B. King, Buddy Guy, and all that, all thanks to the Rolling Stones, I got to hear them. And after that, I've been listening ever since.
Awesome.
And that itself inspired me to pick up the guitar. I was actually learning piano, and after I heard the Rolling Stones, I said, no more piano. So
So that's amazing. And so, did you just start learning um, the blues, or was it like some basic theories? And did you go
No,
through?
no, I think I started with classical guitar. So I was like this, I was playing all that and with sheet music and all, but I didn't really get into that much. And then I started playing just acoustic guitar and just learning the blues riffs and all that. And then later on, I moved on to electric, and yeah, that's it.
After you moved on to electric, did you have a teacher to teach you, or were you just going?
Actually, the first 3 years I had a teacher in school. In my school itself, there's a teacher who taught music, and he was very influential for me because he introduced me to so many guitar players. Like he got me to Clapton, Bigon, and all that, and then even jazz. He got me to George Benson, and that really opened my mind up. But after that, he left the school, and ever since I've just been learning on my own just by listening. And yeah,
We'll come to that part very soon when we're discussing the
okay.
theory. So, for all people here, this section I'm going to be breaking this up into getting deep into understanding how these two great guitar players got into blues in the first place, and then we'll also talk about a little bit of history, and then we'll move into theory and typically application. Mostly, this that part will be addressing a lot of musicians who have joined here, or a lot of aspiring musicians who want to learn blues and who want to understand where to start. We'll be talking a lot about that, and then we'll be talking about more things about how to adapt that into your own styles and stuff. So, Ehsan, I know that you studied at MI,
Mhm.
but I think you were already a player much before that. And
Yeah.
how did you start?
See, the thing is, with me, I think my musical introduction would have been from my father. He probably bought one of the first cassette players which were made, those big buttons to rewind and stuff like that. And he bought a whole lot of cassettes when he went to England. My Fair Lady, some Xavier Cugat, then I mean, like a lot of jazzy, a lot of Latin American stuff, Paul Morier and all that. So I used to keep listening to that. He used to listen to it on loop. He's very fond of music. In fact, he was very musical himself, and but he was an architect. I come from a family of architects. And then there was my uncle, which was his brother, and he had other albums like The Ventures. And I remember he had a copy of Beatles' Help, and there was an album called the 500 Guitars South of the Border, which are these 100 guitar players used to play this kind of Latin American stuff. So I used to listen to all of that, and then also listen to Hindi music, which my mom used to listen to. She had the radio on also, and she used to listen to I mean everything that was big then. Then my sister got into music, and she started listening to Santana and ABBA and that kind of stuff. So I started listening to that as well, and then I happened to go to a cousin's house where he told me, man, listen to this album, and he played me Deep Purple's Fireball. And that's the first time I heard that. I said, my God, this is like some serious energy music here. But I still hadn't started playing guitar or anything, Then two buildings down from me, this friend of mine called Alan Sayani. You've heard of Hamid Sayani, the famous
Of course.
thing, Hamid Sayani's son. And he played guitar, and he played me Here Comes the Sun. And I heard that, and I saw his fingers move like that, and I heard that dun 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 dun. I said, "Oh man, I have to learn guitar." So he says, "I've got a teacher who teaches me. I'll tell him about you also." The teacher turned out to be Bismarck Rodriguez,
Oh my
which
God.
everybody's heard of. And weirdly, he taught my uncle as well. So how many students Bismarck taught all of Bombay. So then I started learning from Bismarck and started playing like major scales up and down, and that the usual, a lot of the like really strict classical kind of not classical guitar but classical technique. And he said, you've got to this, you have to play this, no nothing else, but which is actually good when I think about it, because it gave me like a super grounding in guitar. And then this friend of mine called Nakul Kamte, who you probably also know,
Of course.
and he had a friend called Keshav Sabarwal, and Keshav Sabarwal used to work on the rigs, and he had all kinds of cassettes from American people and all that he met. And he had a cassette on one. It was a Sony. I remember it was a green Sony cassette. On one side, it just said the blues, and on the other side, there was an album called John Mayall's Jazz Blues Fusion, which Amitabh, I remember I told you, the guitar player, Freddie Fast Fingers Robinson.
Yeah, yeah, sir, yeah.
So the first song on that cassette, which was the blues, was a Johnny Winter song, which was he doing a cover of an older blues song called "It's My Own Fault." And I heard that, and I said, "Oh my God, I'm getting goosebumps even thinking about it." I said that, man, what is this? Yeah. And then on the other side, I was hearing this jazz blues fusion album, which are two completely different sides of the blues. One is like rock blues and everything of that kind of sort, and the other side was John Mayall playing this jazz blues fusion with all these trumpet players and all that. And I heard this guitar player called Freddie Robinson, who was called Freddie Fast Fingers Robinson. And I'd really recommend anyone to listen to this album called Jazz Blues Fusion. So that is when the blues, bit into me. Then I learned the blues scale, and this was all outside of Bismarck. Huh? So Bismarck said, "No, you've got to play scales and that kind of thing, read music and that kind of thing." But so I started playing, that kind of thing, and then Bismarck's son Chris, I used to go to their house also a lot because they had a huge collection of guitars, old Gibson Les Pauls and like 62 Strat and all kinds of really lovely stuff here. And one day we were jamming. The next day he called me up with his son saying, "We're forming a band. Do you want to come and jam with us?" So I went, and that was the first band I started playing with. It was called Pegasus, and we played in a place called the Kitchen, which doesn't exist anymore. But it's, as you come off Juhu Beach, past that Panwara, you take a left. The first restaurant after that parking lot was a restaurant called the Kitchen. And it was run by a friend of mine called Sandeep Sansgiri, who used to like to have live bands playing there. So my first concert was in that little place called the Kitchen with a crowd, like a crowd of maybe 100 people, which
Wow.
was super. Then after that, I joined a band with Sanjay Divechar called Crosswinds. And and both these bands, we never conformed to what the public wanted, like, smoke on the water and cocaine, none of that kind of stuff. We played Allman Brothers Band. We played, different kinds of stuff. With Crossroads, we played Leonard Skinner, REO Speedwagon, Al Stewart, Little River Band, all
Wow.
like, good stuff here. So that was my grounding, in all that style of music. And playing so many different kinds of songs is what got me eventually into different styles of music. So many things.
It's amazing, and the kind of bands that you mentioned.
Yeah.
This is the pre-internet era, and this is uh,
This is pre, yeah, I mean, this is
it's
pre
cassettes. So
CD, it's just albums and cassettes. That is it.
and even if you go to some of the most legendary big stores like the one at Kolaba, uh,
Rhythm House.
if you go to Rhythm House as well, you may not find many of these bands. So how did you get access to this kind of music at
But
that?
actually, it was only because of friends, traveling people who traveled abroad. They'd get an album, or someone's sister, a friend of mine, Anil, his sister used to stay abroad, and she used to always send down albums or bring down albums every time she came. So that was the first time I heard bands like 10 Years After and all that. And then we used to go and see Woodstock every Sunday when it came. So for 3 months, we'd see Woodstock every Sunday. 36 shows, or 12 shows or 16 shows of Woodstock. Because that was like your only exposure to the West, in terms of the live music thing. So we used to, when somebody got a new album, it was like, I got a call. Hey man, I got a new Steely Dan album. My sister brought me a copy of Gaucho. We'd all go with our Chrome cassettes or whatever cassettes to make a copy of it. I mean, sorry, it was all, it was all piracy, but like, what the hell?
During
We
that
didn't
time,
have, we didn't have any other access here. That was the only access we had.
and we didn't even know of the word piracy. I thought it was by default that you go and exchange music, and you and Chrome tapes, of course, were the better tapes. So
Yeah,
you had to choose putting Hindi music into the normal tapes and putting the Chrome for all the better recordings, just because the recordings themselves were so good that you
yeah,
wanted to put it on a different tape. And then there was metal that came later, metal
yeah.
tapes. So,
Metal tape.
and I remember, I think our entire schooling during that time was actually on music, was all about reading those liner notes from those tapes.
Yeah, that was the fun. No, that was the fun. Yeah,
So
I mean, I miss albums. I mean, you get them again and all, but now, I mean, getting them, making place for it, is a separate thing. But
yeah,
that
yeah,
was fun.
it's just crazy.
Yeah,
Okay,
I mean, Rhythm House was a big place for me to listen to a lot of music because I remember I went there once in the afternoon. They had these little listening booths. There were
yeah,
about five of them, and there's a little box on the counter, literally a box which was about that big, with maybe about 30 albums which are like the new albums, whether it's Hindi or Western or not. Right in the front, I saw this album with this, which looked like a good cover. I'd never heard of the band, which was the Van Halen, the first album. And I went into the listening booth and I put it on and I heard like Running with the Devil. I said, "Oh my God, what is this music?" I had to get. So that was a that was a major thing.
crazy. This is amazing.